Today's sponsor is Helix Sleep, a longtime partner of the channel who has been hooking both me, my team, and all of you at home with incredible sleep solutions that guarantees 10 years of incredible rest. Helix Sleep is all about finding the right mattress for you with the Helix Sleep quiz to ensure that you're getting a perfect fit for your unique sleep preferences. Mattress will be delivered anywhere in the United States absolutely free, and it's easy to set up right out of the box. I've had my Helix Sleep mattress for more than 2 years now, and our general manager Frazier just got his about 6 months ago. He's been loving how firm and springy it all is. Helix Sleep offers a 100-night sleep trial, so you can try out Helix Sleep at no risk. Not only that, but they'll knock off $200 off that price and throw in 2 free pillows when you click the link below, or go to helixsleep.com/thecompletionist, where you can find financing options and flexible payment plans. And even after all of that, if you don't love your mattress, Helix will offer a full refund. Again, if you're looking to support the channel and get some better sleep at the same time, go to helixsleep.com/thecompletionist. Happy napping. Back to the video. Because this material has been done before and better, especially in the original, there is no need to see this version. These are the words of venerable film critic Roger Ebert on John Carpenter's The Thing, a reboot of the 1951 classic film The Thing from Another World. Critics were put off by the tonal and visual shift of Carpenter's reboot and wrote it off as schlock. However, with a few years' distance, The Thing eventually grew into a cult classic and is revered today as one of the greats. Pushback is inevitable for any remake or reboot. It's understandable. Change is hard. We live in a society where things are constantly being rebooted, recontextualized, prequelized, and revisited. But sometimes, reboots are actually good, despite what the internet might tell you. Battletoads, the legendarily difficult beat-em-up series from the 90s, is a known quantity. The 2020 reboot, in many ways, is completely different from what the die-hard fans expected. And in this case, it works. Hey everyone, and welcome to an all-new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Battletoads has a legacy of being one of the most difficult series of all time. The original game, its Super Nintendo follow-up, even the weird Double Dragon Cross Battletoads mashup, and the arcade version are worthy challenges for anyone who wants the feeling of conquering the impossible. But the latest entry in this franchise aims to be more than just a tough beat-em-up with modern sensibilities like achievements. Battletoads 2020 is in my opinion, successful reinvention of what the Battletoads can be. As you all know, I am a deep lover of all things beat-em-ups, and the Battletoads series is no exception. It was not just a staple of my childhood, but also helped teach a young completionist the necessary grit to push through any challenge. And the Battletoads franchise certainly offers tons of those. But my relationship with the Battletoads reboot is a touch more unique than most. I was actually in the Microsoft Theater at E3 2018 when the very first announcement trailer hit. And I felt like I was the only one in the entire audience that was incredibly excited for this new entry. And similarly feel now that I'm one of the few who truly enjoys this game for what it is. I give Battletoads 2020 my completionist rating of Finish It, because it almost nails everything it attempts to do perfectly, and it is a successful tribute to the original games. The game incorporates modern touches, but still feels very challenging, without being an overwhelming experience. Initial reactions to this Battletoads were muted, due to its art direction and scattershot genre focus. But I think truly that if you approach this game and accept it for what it is on its own terms, it is a worthy follow-up to the original titles. With that said, let's begin.
Yes! All glory goes to the winner! Game over! Wake up! Last one standing wins!
What makes a Battletoad? You've got to be tough, ruthless, cheeky, and just a little bit subversive. You gotta both roll with and dish out the punches. But most of all, you've got to push forward, no matter what comes your way. Whether you're playing the game or you're a developer who has had a long-standing love of a series that felt all but consigned to the backlog of history. The Battletoads reboot was a long time coming, but Delilah Studios released one hell of a game. Battletoads is one of those properties where the license was stuck in a weird netherrealm for ages. Rare, the original creators of the series and historically one of my favorite publishers and developers of all time, have been sitting on the IP for something like 2 decades before they handed the reins over to someone else for the reboot. That someone was Delilah Studios, with CEO and eventual Battletoads 2020 game director AJ Scrutton taking an extremely personal interest in getting the game made. Full disclosure, AJ graciously spent a few hours playing games with us during our charity stream event Preserved Play in 2022, where we raised money for the Video Game History Foundation. This video even marks the fulfillment of a promise I made last year during that very charity event. Those of who watched and donated will know that I said live on stream that if we hit $30,000 in donations, I would complete this game and do a video on it. And thus, here we are. Yes, AJ and I have spoken directly about his work on this game, and he even agreed to answer some questions for you guys, knowing that I was going to be completing this title. But in no way has this impacted my feelings about this game. For AJ, Battletoads is a way of life. But he was also extremely conscious that the series has lain dormant for many years, meaning that not everyone even knows who the Battletoads are these days. Speaking to him about the making of this game and our mutual love of the classics has been a delight. For the uninitiated, the Battletoads are 3 radical frog dudes who kick ass and do their best to save the galaxy from baddies like the Dark Queen. Their games are all about teaming up with friends and beating the hell out of anyone who crosses your path, as long as you make your way to the end of the stage, probably to engage in some kind of boss fight. The beat-em-up gameplay can be repetitive, but is occasionally broken by mini-games or other mechanics. Previous entries tend to be pretty straightforward, emphasizing racking up a high score and stringing together big combos to knock out enemies. The tone of this game is in-your-face, over-the-top violence, with edgy humor and music that is always shredded. This latest entry takes all of that early 90s energy and injects it into the modern era. Because a lot has changed since the originals. Battletoads is known for being controller-shatteringly hard, the kind of game that takes a long time to complete, but only because of its arguably unfair difficulty. The actual content is pretty slim, demanding pixel perfection execution from those who dare to press onward. But rather than just making a game that appeals only to diehard fans who can race the Turbo Tunnel blindfolded, AJ and his team at Delilah made a game with the intent of creating a new generation of Battletoads fans. After all, every Battletoads game has got to be someone's first. By folding in influences from modern beat-em-up style games and many other genres, I'd say they made the right call. The original Battletoads, Rash, Pimple, and Zitz, are huge muscly frog aliens whose design was inspired by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No surprise there. The 1991 game was a pretty by-the-numbers third-person beat-em-up, with an emphasis on keeping things difficult. This reboot keeps the core side-scrolling beat-em-up gameplay, but folds in other things too. Yes, the bulk of the gameplay is devoted to battling through linear stages, but come the second half of the game, I found myself doing a lot of platforming, puzzle solving, and even twin-stick shooting. Battletoads brings the energy of a kid hyped up on Rice Krispie Treats cereal on a Saturday morning, as they flick through several channels to get a little taste of every cartoon on the air. Yet, Battletoads also has other major draws. Its emphasis on multiplayer, and of course, the tough-as-nails difficulty. Beat-em-ups are always best with friends or siblings. It's why playing through recent entries in this space like River City Girls or Shredder's Revenge or Streets of Rage 4 is infinitely more enjoyable with the group. Now, I grew up with the Battletoads and beat-em-ups overall, and I have many memories of hours spent trying to master the original game with my brother or friends from school. Battletoads keeps this tradition alive with 3-player co-op, couch style, but weirdly, not online via console. If you want to play online, You have to do it via remote play or Steam Share, which is a real bummer if you ask me for console players. This likely contributed to the fans' initial negative reception, as this game was released during the COVID pandemic of 2020, when online play was more valuable than ever. I played this game on an Xbox Series X via Game Pass, where there are 61 total achievements, and a good handful of those are co-op focused. As far as the vaunted difficulty of the series, and this game in particular, I had to take a few things into account. I started the game on the hardest available difficulty, and with my two co-op partners, TOVG creative director Michael Barney and lead editor Pat. Between the three of us, we're pretty good at games, but some of these achievements require a lot of dedication and focus. For the making of this video, we played through Battletoads off and on for months, trying to perfect our strategies and achieve the impossible. Based on scheduling and logistics, I landed on doing 2 full playthroughs for Battletoads. The harder setting I planned to play through in co-op with the focus on earning as many achievements as possible as we went along, and playthrough 2 would be on easy mode by myself, a cleanup run where I would pick up any achievements or collectibles I missed the first time around. No matter how you slice it, completing the 3 acts and 25 stages of Battletoads is a pretty significant undertaking that requires a lot of mental fortitude and some serious thumb fu. Not only is every battle in the combat-focused stages ranked, there are 5 collectibles to find in every stage as well. And of those 5, 1 is triggered by earning a S rank or A rank in all fights, which meant I had to get great at combat. The rest of the collectibles required me and my partners to be observant and vigilant about replaying stages to find everything. And yes, there are stage-specific achievements as well, so I expected to have to do a lot of replaying individual moments. But even with the daunting task of completing this entire game looming before me, I was instantly drawn in by Battletoads' style. Whether you're a newly converted fan who's played the original or arcade versions on Rare Replay, or a millennial diehard who fantasizes about being stepped on by the Dark Queen, and now talks about that a lot in therapy, there is plenty to latch onto with this reboot's very smart, very meta approach to the genre. Part of the appeal of Battletoads in general has always been their audacious attitude. All the main characters are named after skin conditions, and yes, they wear awesome spiky knee pads everywhere, all the time. It might look a little different, but I think this reboot captures what makes the Battletoads as a concept so instantly iconic. By riffing on the familiar and putting their own spin on a classic, this Battletoads can stand tall as its own hilarious thing. Plot-wise, Battletoads 2020 takes some wild swings. The game begins with the Toads smashing goons like normal, but things quickly take a turn for the surreal. After a standard intro stage that includes tutorials, waves of enemies, and a boss fight against a Bebop analog Porkshank that repeats 3 times with escalating difficulty, the Toads finally arrive at their victory celebration. It even includes the very reveal of their very own Mount Rushmore. The Toads admire their Walk of Fame Hollywood stars, the music swells, and suddenly all 3 leap into the air, Superman style, as Zitz exclaims that everyone loves us and we can fly. The scene continues to escalate in absurdity, with Rash chanting, "We are gods!" until the scene suddenly screeches to a halt. Everything that the player experiences in that first stage is a figment of the Toads' imagination. Turns out the Battletoads have been mysteriously trapped in a bunker, slowly losing their minds before randomly being discovered by an alien construction crew. They are not the beloved heroes of the galaxy they thought they once were, and instead have fallen into obscurity over the last 26 years. They were trapped in their fantasy simulation. So the Toads set off on a quest to reclaim their former glory by battling their foe from the original game, the Dark Queen. But even that quest gets flipped on its head a couple of acts in. The entire first level sets the tone perfectly for everything that follows. Battletoads as a franchise has always been absurd, and this reboot leans hard into the fourth wall breaking meta humor of the 90s era Nickelodeon shows, paired with the visual sensibilities of early 2000s Cartoon Network. The choice to satirize an already satirical franchise feels bold, a clear response to those who idolize the past as being perfect. Battletoads has a bold art style that emphasizes the strength of animation, pushing the limits of what I expected at every turn. The exaggerated proportions of every punch, kick, and special move instantly transports me to a specific time and place. Redesigning characters is always a minefield, but I love how everyone looks in this title. No game should be punished for its art style, and I think the models for Rash, Pimple, and Zitz managed to communicate something about each character. Just look how utterly large Pimple is. You know that's your big, slow, heavy-hitting dumpster truck strong boy just by glancing at him. Every character's combos and movesets feel distinct and are indicated visually, even if things get very chaotic very quickly on the hardest difficulty in 3-player co-op. The hand-drawn animation style is definitely a left turn from what Battletoads has traditionally looked like, but I appreciated this unique look. AJ and the art team wanted to capture a certain subversive feel, and that feeling is first and foremost communicated by this bold art style. If you had told me that any given cutscene had first aired at night on Adult Swim, I probably would have believed you. Backgrounds are bursting with detail and color, and even feature Easter eggs from all kinds of influences and gaming history that was important to the devs. AJ and I share a deep love and admiration for the LucasArts classic Day of the Tentacle, and the first stage has a reference to that very appendage. There are Easter eggs galore and nods to Double Dragon, Sea of Thieves, The Matrix, The Martian, all kinds of media that Rare and Delilah wanted to pay tribute to. I can understand that some players might feel like the redesigned art style is pulling the rug out from the lovers of the old school Battletoads pixelated look, but I enjoy this just as much. It helps the game stand out in a crowded field, and the script is genuinely hilarious, highlighting the writing team's experience working on popular animated shows. I'm reminded of Invader Zim or Venture Bros, with galactic hijinks and meta commentary at every turn that never becomes mean-spirited. And of course, the music is a huge highlight. One of these days, I'm going to do a breakdown of why soundtracks to beat-em-ups are superior than most other genres. Suck on that, Uematsu. It's a joke, everyone. Calm down. I love Uematsu. Calm down. The mix of hair metal riffs and straight-up thrash guitar gives me life. And even after hours spent completing the game, I never grew tired of it. David Wise from Rare composed the soundtrack for the original Battletoads. Another David Housden, composed the music for the reboot. This entire score rocks so unbelievably hard. Housden even arranges some of Wise's original tracks for those who want a nostalgia boost, with astounding results. To me, the entire soundtrack faithfully captures the mood of the original games and also puts its own distinct stamp on the proceedings. The highly stylized aesthetics and character designs may have put some people off this reboot initially, but after a few years of distance since release, and applying a little critical objectivity, I found myself falling in love with the style of Battletoads 2020. Completing this game was a visual and audio delight, and I grew to appreciate everything this game has going for it with its reimagining of what a modern Battletoads game could look and sound like. But the style has to match the substance. Fortunately, playing Battletoads feels just as satisfying as watching it. Delilah put the work in to make Battletoads a memorable completion experience, even if fully completing it doesn't quite hit that high mark. The original Battletoads is legendarily hard, but modern Battletoads creates a new kind of difficulty. It's still a tough mountain to climb, but no longer the Everest of gaming. The game leans into goals that still feels achievable and satisfying. It just no longer smacks you in the face over and over again to the same degree. Overcoming difficulty leads to joy, even if the complete journey feels a little uneven. Battletoads 2020 has a fun plot with metatextual commentary on what it means to reboot a game with a diehard fan base years after being relevant. There are, however, some pacing issues both in terms of the cutscenes, but also in terms of the gauntlets presented to you, which can mess with completionists and groups playing together who aren't all on the same page. I feel like there are some scenes that are missing or stages that were cut, resulting in lopsided gameplay in Battletoads 2020. Like a slightly uneven desk, it's solid and sturdy, but it rocks back and forth just a little when you lean on it. Take the jump from Act 2 to the Olympic minigame section, where there's no real story beat to link these moments. AJ had told me, in hindsight, maybe trying to fit 14 different genres into a game with the time scale we had was a little bit of a bridge too far. And in that regard, well, I'm kind of inclined to agree here. I think my major issue with completing Battletoads is that it isn't quite balanced as a whole. The game is both incredibly hard and not hard enough. depending on your expectations. Completing the game on hard mode is indeed an arduous task, but only if you're playing with a full stable of 3 friends. It can be hard to find that flow of combat when that very combat is constantly being interrupted. Throwing a slow-paced puzzle section at you or an arcade-style spaceship shooter is great for novelty and comedy, but it also messed with our flow. I don't think these gameplay switch-ups are bad by any means, but I do think they can be frustrating when you're trying to master the combat systems during a completion run. In fact, I'd say that I didn't really fully master combat until I did 2 things. My second playthrough on an easier difficulty, and eventually placing on Battletoads difficulty alone. Some of the punishing combat gauntlets on the Battletoads setting are downright pleasurable on normal or easy mode. Fights become generally much easier to read with less enemies on screen. And when I went solo, I could really internalize what combos looked and felt like. In solo mode, you control all 3 Toads and can kind of tag them out MVC style. Earning an S rank is undeniably easier when you have direct control of the Toads you're swapping out to ensure attack variety. Essentially, it's combo, 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 swap, combo, 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 swap, combo, 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 swap, and bam, there's your S rank. Being fluent in Toad switching is vital to success in combat. Let me put it this way. Trying to complete the back half of this game on hard took me and 2 other people over 12 hours. It is a big ask for 3 people to operate at the same high level of play for a long time, even when you can revive your allies infinitely if you're careful. The game can become a tough slog if you're unprepared for the spikes of difficulty. For those of you going down the completionist road with me, don't do what me and my team did, which was try to bang through hard mode without ramping up to it. You can't toggle the difficulty settings once started, so if you plan on calling your shot and scaling the mountain of completion, learn your combos and the differences between Rash, Pimple, and Zitz on an easier setting at your leisure. They really do have pretty massive differences, and I have my preferences. Generally, I like playing a big, slow, strong guy, but I actually preferred the speed and combos of Rash and Zitz over the brute strength of Pimple. Completing Battletoads does go beyond mastering combat, and this is where the occasional unbalancing comes further into play. There is, unfortunately, a turbo tunnel-related achievement, Live and Let Drive, that requires all 3 co-op players to survive for 300 seconds total. This became one of those stop the presses achievements where me and 2 others spent over an hour essentially memorizing the turbo tunnel, which admittedly felt like a real throwback. Playing on tadpole difficulty significantly slows down the speed of the tunnel. So, if you're aiming for completion, maybe don't do what we did trying to do it on hard mode. Completing the Guardian boss battle without getting hit in 3-player co-op is also its own special hell, even on the easiest setting. The Guardian has huge screen-filling attacks that can be tough to dodge. And again, the more players on screen, the greater the odds of failure. Achievements like this can take the momentum out of the fun storytelling, which can be a bummer. In an interview, AJ candidly admitted that the difficulty has some wild ups and downs. Rare studio head Craig Duncan told him during development that they were making the game too hard, and that maybe they were too close to the situation to see it properly. AJ said, "Me being very hard-headed at the time felt like it was fine, and it was hitting like a 5 out of 10 difficulty. It wasn't until the game released and we watched others play the game that we realized it was a lot more difficult than we thought. Even I struggle to 100% it now on Battletoad difficulty." Now, I still don't think it's impossible to overcome, but it's a funny example of how important it is to have fresh faces test your project. I really respect the out-of-left-field decision to shift the direction of the game at the end of Act 2, bringing in completely new characters and even more gameplay styles and minigames. I loved having to bring my action platforming skills to bear, and I also loved having to escape the literal belly of the beast stage. Finding out that the evil plan of the newly introduced Topians was to force the Battletoads to become influencers was a special kind of dark humor that I deeply appreciated. And I love a good old-fashioned enemies to allies character twist, and our old nemesis, the Dark Queen, is a perfectly posh representation of this trope. The plot twists and character swaps make for some really great comedy, especially when one of the Toads straight up leaves the party and devotes himself to pacifism. But don't worry, he'll eventually snap out of it and beat the crap out of everyone around him before the other Toads come to rescue in a particularly wacky button-mashing minigame. Now, to be clear, this game shifts its genre almost entirely for its final act. The last major beat-em-up stage is in Act 2, completely undercutting my own expectations and probably everyone else's. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed all of these different swoops and swerves. There's even a clear homage to Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which, yeah, it's a pretty great party trick, but it definitely feels pretty weird coming after 3 shooter levels. And I gotta say, I feel like maybe the bit goes on slightly just 1 or 2 beats too long. These levels are undeniably well constructed, but not always well communicated to the player. It all kind of clicks in once you understand what's going on, but it is certainly a journey getting there. Completing the main story is its own reward, and it's a credit to this game's design that I found myself going back and replaying Battletoads over and over again. Even after earning all the co-op achievements, I loved replaying this game by myself and using the skills I learned to clean house. Even though the balance is a little all over the place, particularly for completionists in co-op, mastering Battletoads felt very satisfying. Just wish there was a little bit more at the tip of the hat to players who did it all. Completing a game like Battletoads pushed me to my limit, sometimes in ways I didn't expect. The difficulty can be rough to adjust to whether you're on your own or with some pals. I wish I could say that there was a bonus that feels worth it for those who put themselves and 2 friends through this meat grinder, but sadly I didn't feel this to be the case. As there are over 5 dozen achievements in Battletoads, it's little wonder that some of them are significantly easier to earn than others. Achievements come fast and furious at first, but slow to a trickle once you're trying to complete the game in co-op and on Battletoads difficulty. Some are simple, story-related achievements that pop once you watch a cutscene or get to the credits. Others required me to completely change my playstyle or master literally every mechanic. The 2 complete playthroughs were necessary though, even if I'd ultimately recommend just doing one. We died thousands of deaths overall, and I spent 21 hours doing everything there was to do. 18 in co-op on hard mode, and about 3 more on easy, giving myself a nice smooth cooldown. No real big secret ending, no alternate skins, no art or music gallery, not even a score-based leaderboard. Simply the knowledge that you are the most battling toad of all. Even if I don't think fully completing Battletoads is for everyone, finishing it is a complete blast. And hey, it's on Game Pass, so easily accessible. The Lala Studios pays homage to the original game by creating a reboot that feels fresh at every turn, where you never know what genre is going to turn up next. There is still remarkable audio-video cohesion, and the passion of the developers and their love for Battletoads is abundantly clear to see. Here's hoping that we don't have to wait yet another 20 years for some type or form of more Battletoads content. Thank you so much for watching, and hey, a special thank you once again to Helix Sleep. Click the link in the box down below to save $200 off your next purchase. And don't forget, Preserved Play 2023 coming up April 15th and the 16th, where we have plenty of retro goodness and fun happening. It's gonna be quite the thing. John Carpenter. John Carpenter will not be joining us for Preserved Play, but remember that thing from the beginning? It's all full circle now.